confused there. All right, so lesson 38 here. The 12 disciples are going to be sent out. So starting at Matthew chapter 9. Okay. We left off reading there. Jesus went and he was doing those works there around Nazareth. He cast out the devils, and the leaders there accused him of being a devil himself. So that was the end of his secret ministry here in Nazareth. Now he's going to continue going about Galilee. So still in that northern area, and Jesus is going to do more teaching here. So verse 35, and Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted, and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. Then saith he unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. There's a few things that we can take a look at and point out here. Jesus obviously goes out to Galilee, and he's going into the towns and villages. And as he goes through and he meets with the people, he realizes what a great lack, what a great hole these people have in their lives. There's a great chasm. They don't understand the truths of the Scripture. It's as though the Pharisees and Sadducees, the priests in the synagogues, have been feeding them gruel. Okay? A food that is not very healthy. Just giving them a few morsels. Wasn't a well-rounded meal that includes the vitamins and the minerals and the nutrients that our bodies need. They've been getting gruel. Nothing good at all. Rather than being fed with delicious, nutritional, healthy foods that would give them all that they needed so that they could live a healthy spiritual life. No, the Pharisees and Sadducees have been feeding them this nothing, just a worthless something to fill your stomach that doesn't help you grow. Okay? Each of you are growing. You need good, healthy food to help you grow. If we would go off into poor countries, we would see what malnutrition looks like. We would see children whose growth is stunted, who's not healthy. Their brains don't develop as well. You are blessed to live here in this country, where you have a good source of food, lack for nothing. Mom and Dad can get you all the proper nutrition you need so that your eyes develop correctly, your brain develops correctly as a young child. Okay? All of your organs properly develop. You don't have to worry about at age 35 you're going to start having diseases and other things because of lack of nutrition that you had as a young person. But spiritually, these people face that, and that's why Jesus has compassion on them. And he also says, it is as though they were sheep with no shepherd. They didn't have any good guidance. They had no true leader who was leading them to the Lord, who was caring for them and watching over them. No, probably the priests and Levites here in this day only thought about money. That's probably what they cared about, or their position in the church. And so it was those things that they focused on. And so Jesus saith unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. What does that mean? I asked you that the harvest is plenteous. Kenton.
There are lots of sheep, but there are hardly any shepherds.
Okay, so who are the sheep? You're right. So there's lots of sheep, hardly any shepherds, but who are the sheep? Who's the harvest?
The people.
What people specifically? Whose people? Yes, God's people. There's a multitude of my people out there, Jesus says. They're all over the place. They need to be gathered. They need to be taught. They need to be instructed. But the problem is, we've got few laborers. We need people to go out into the harvest, to preach and teach the word. We need those who will properly nourish these souls spiritually. So the harvest is ready. It's a plentiful harvest. God's people are out there waiting. Now, God will always bring his people to him. Don't doubt that. Well, what if no one goes out? Will it mean that they won't be able to go to heaven? No. God doesn't work that way. God will call all of his people to him by one means or another. Okay? But Jesus is trying to paint this picture here that there are plenty of God's people out there, and there are a necessity, it is necessary to send out laborers, but they're very few at this time. We need more. So that's why he says, pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, God in heaven, he's speaking of there, will send forth laborers into his harvest. We need what? Who are the laborers? What is Jesus talking about here? Jesse? All right, the laborers are the preachers. That's what we need, Jesus says here. We need preachers. So again, a good encouragement for you young men. Okay? There's a wonderful large class of young men in the seminary, 7 or 9, I don't remember right now. Pay attention in your church bulletin. There's a few vacancies. Anybody know where the vacancies are? Kenton? Okay, one's at Faith. Now I got to double check, but I think Reverend Spronk may have taken the call there. But anyways, so there's Faith, and then where else? Dune. Okay. Those are the 2 churches here in the U.S. And then where else is there a place that they're beginning to call minister for? Faith? Not Singapore. Reverend Lanny is there, and he's answered that call. Philippines. Reverend Smith and his family are there, but they're going to come back to the United States. Now that, if he does that, he can probably take a call and fill in one of the vacant churches. So if I remember, we have to double check that. So if Reverend Spronk did take the call to Faith, then what is it? Peace. Then Peace Church in Illinois will have a vacancy. Dune. And then there's also a retiring minister who recently retired. And so his church is calling people, or he will soon retire, so his church is calling ministers. Anybody know which one? Reverend Heisinger just declined the call to this church. Yeah, Reverend Slopsman. What church was Reverend Slopsman at? First Church in Grand Rapids. Okay, so there'll be 3 vacancies. But anyways, there are other men who will be coming out of the seminary soon too. Seminary in Barnhill. Okay, he's doing his internship up in Edgerton with Pastor Kuiper. And then after him, there may be one other seminarian. But what if there's all of a sudden 9? What are we going to do with all these extra seminarians when they graduate? If there's only a few openings. Now, there will probably be plenty of more openings. There's plenty of older ministers who are probably ready to retire. But if there aren't openings, what can we do with those extra ministers? How can we properly use them? They've been trained. They're ready for a call. How can we use them? Garrett? What's Jesus saying here?
You could send them to where there are churches.
Right. We could send them out into mission fields. Maybe Reverend Lanning could use some help in Singapore, because nearby him is Myanmar. And there's some contacts there. India. Maybe Namibia. Okay, maybe over towards Russia and Germany we've got some contacts. Okay. Maybe Northern Ireland can use an extra minister. Maybe Reverend Breintsma could use some help over towards Pittsburgh. Okay. Anyways, there's lots of places that they could be used. So that's a great way for you young men to think about that too. Are there ways that God can use me? God can call me. So think about that. Seriously consider the calling of the ministry first. And then if God says no there, He'll still have a wonderful place for you in life, in the church, and in a great calling. Okay? But consider that. Anyways, let's go on then in Matthew chapter 10. Here we see Jesus sending out His disciples. And verse 1, and when He had called unto Him His 12 disciples, He gave them power against unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease. Christ gave His disciples special powers. Reverend Geikelar can't go around and heal people. He can't cast out devils. Okay? But Jesus gave the disciples that power. They had a special power. Not only would their voices have a power, because it's the Word of God, to work in the hearts of men, but also they would have the power to do these things here against unclean spirits, cast them out, heal all manner of sickness and diseases, so that as the disciples went into these small towns and villages and preached the gospel to God's people, those people would see and believe and know that this is God working here. God would do this for a special time. Nowadays we don't see that. Okay? Now the names of the 12 disciples are these. The first, Simon, who is called Peter and Andrew's brother. So Jesus sent them out in pairs. So Simon and Andrew probably went. James, the son of Zebedee, and John his brother. So there's another pair. Philip and Bartholomew, they went one way. Thomas and Matthew the publican, they went over here. James, the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus, they went this direction. Simon the Canaanite and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him, they too went out in another direction. They spread all through the land of Galilee here, and they preach. Okay, they teach. They heal. They cast out demons. Okay. And so they go out in pairs. But who do they go to? Well, let's take a look at verse 5. These 12 Jesus sent forth and commanded them, saying, Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as ye go, preach, saying, The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out the devils. Freely ye have received, freely give. That's pretty important there. The time is not yet ripe for the word to go to the Gentiles, even though Jesus has given us a few glimpses of that by speaking to the Samaritan woman. That'll be the job of Paul. That'll be the job of the apostles later on to go to the Gentiles, to Peter. God will send visions. Okay? Right now, they have to go out, and as they're looking to the cities, and well, should we stop in this? Well, this is a city here in Samaria. We need to pass by this place. Jesus instructed us not to go there. Over here, here we have a city of Jews at a synagogue. Let us go preach to these people and find the lost sheep. Okay? It's not as though they walked into the city and got here and then all of a sudden, I'll just preach and see if there's any work here. No, Jesus said specifically, go and seek out my sheep. Find them. Go to the houses. Knock on the doors. Introduce yourselves. When the door slams on your face, you know you're not welcome there. Child of God does not live in that house. But go and teach and preach and guide and instruct these people, and you'll find God's sheep in those places. And then teach them and instruct them, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Jesus is here. Behold, be ready to answer the call. Listen to the Master. Okay? But only go to the Jews. First, go throughout my country, my land. Go throughout Israel, and there do your preaching and teaching. Guide and instruct there. Okay? Now, as they're going about this, what provisions will they have? Where will they stay? What will they do? Jesus gives them guidance as that as well. Okay. Verse 9 and 10, provide neither gold nor silver nor brass in your purses, nor scrip for your journey, neither two coats, neither shoes, nor yet staves, for the workman is worthy of his meal. In other words, you don't need a pouch full of gold and silver. Boy, this is a long journey I'm going to be going on. You can imagine the disciples thinking, I'm going to be going to this town and this town. That's 50 miles roundabout. And I'm going to need a place to stay, and I'm going to need to pay for food. There's inns along the way. I better go and collect some gold and put that in my pouch before I leave. Maybe run home and see if my brothers will loan me some money. No, Jesus said, no, don't do that. Don't pack extra sandals. Don't pack extra clothes. But rather go out as a servant and know that God will take care of you while you're out there. God will provide your meals when you come to that first town and you knock on the door and the family hears the word and they love you. They will give you a place to stay. Trust in God. You'll have a place to stay in each home. They'll provide a meal for you. When you wake up in the morning, they'll probably provide you with another meal and a small loaf of bread and a little wine that you can take on your journey. And as you go to the next town, you'll have food enough for the day. Trust in God to provide your daily provisions. Okay? And in that way, you'll experience true blessing. So God tells them that there. But what happens if you're accepted or rejected? Let's take a look at that. Jesus gives some guidance here too at verse 11. And into whatsoever city or town ye shall enter, inquire who in it is worthy, and there abide till ye go thence. And when ye come into an house, salute it. And if the house be worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it be not worthy, let your peace return to you. And whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear your words, when you depart out of that house or city, shake off the dust from your very feet. Verily, I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. It was a custom in that day, in their greetings, to say, peace be to you. We might shake hands and say, welcome. My name is. But in those days, the greeting was, peace be to you. And when the disciples introduced themselves, one of two things are going to happen. Okay? God works in the heart of men. They either reject God. Okay? Well, they can't reject Him, but they either know Him or they do not know Him, because He's either worked in their hearts or not worked in their hearts. Okay? And that's what's going to happen as disciples go from door to door. And when they go to the place that does not receive you, does not hear your words, when you depart out of that house or city, shake off the dust off your very feet. I ask you, what's that a symbol of? What do you say? What's that a picture of? There's other references in the Bible too. What are some pictures there that's shaking the dust off the feet? Faith, what'd you think there? Megan? All right. Yes, it's just a sign. It's just a picture. Okay? Shaking the dust off the feet, it's as though they aren't going with you. You aren't remembering them. Okay? You don't need to be concerned about them. They're not God's children. So shake the dust off your feet. And then that next verse, that is, to me, such an important thing for us to understand, because that can apply to us too. We think back to the Old Testament. Lot was living in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? He chose poorly. He chose to live in a city that was worldly because it appealed to him. What did God do to those cities? How did God destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? What did He send from heaven? What did He send? Jennifer, remember? What did God send? Fire and brimstone. They destroyed those cities. They were wiped out. That's a pretty significant punishment. And God says, these cities, in the day of judgment, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in the day of judgment, they'll be punished even worse because their sin is greater. How is that possible? Why will God hold the people in these cities more responsible than the men of Sodom and Gomorrah? Grant? Garrett?
They had the scriptures that they could learn from, but they didn't use it.
Okay, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah would have had a little bit of scriptures, so that's true, but these guys had more scriptures. But what else is going on right now that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah didn't get to see? Micah? Yeah, Jesus' miracles. Jesus was there preaching and teaching. So, of course, they had more of the scriptures, as Grant Garrett said. That's absolute. They had way more scriptures than the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay. Not only that, they've got Jesus and His miracles, and they still won't believe? Shame on them. Okay? Shame on them. Now look at us. We've got even more. Not only do we have the scriptures, we haven't seen any miracles or wonders. We don't need to. We have the scriptures. And what do you have that even these people didn't have? Garrett? Holy Spirit works in our hearts to make all of us able to know and understand these things, see them and believe them with our minds. And so we too will be destroyed and held even more accountable than Sodom and Gomorrah, because we have an even greater blessing, an opportunity than these people did. So great warning. The rest of the chapter, Jesus gives a warning to the disciples about what work will be like, that they will be persecuted. The job will not be easy, it will be difficult. as they go out and go forth. Not necessarily right now as they go through the land, but their true difficulty will come later after Jesus dies on the cross and great persecution is happening throughout the land. And Jesus comforts them and says, do not be worried. Okay? God will always be with you. I will always be with you. I will care for you and comfort you. And that word of encouragement in these verses that follow are words of encouragement to our pastors today still too. That there may come to them persecution. People may mock them and make fun of them. But don't let that get your heart down. Okay? Because God will bless the efforts of His preachers and His ministers. God will give a special blessing to those men who devote their life to the work in the church. So again, another great reason, great blessings are there for you young men who answer the call to the gospel. Think about that. But the disciples here have that too, even though they won't first face huge persecutions right now, today, and the next week as they go out and preach and teach. But it's in the future, Jesus is telling them, when you go out after I die, you will face many things. But know and trust that God is in control. He is a sovereign God. You do not need to fear.